नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयं मुदीरयेत्। शृण्वतां स्वकथकृष्णः पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तनः हृदयन्तः स्तो हि भद्राणि विदुनोति सुहृत्सताम्। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवति उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय. So we are continuing our discussion of the first canto, and this is a fresh chapter. It's chapter 11. The background is that in the previous sessions, especially the previous session, we talked about Krishna departing Hastinapur. The Kurukshetra battle is over. Yudhishthir Maharaj has taken over the kingdom, and subsequent to Yudhishthira taking over the kingdom and the battle being over, there were incidents which took place which were extraordinarily painful. So, for instance, there was before the taking over of the kingdom. So there was the departure of Bhishma Dev. We spoke about it. There was an entire chapter dedicated to show how special Bhishma Dev was, and to also exemplify the nature of death. So how we prepare and how we exist is going to determine how we depart. So which isn't such a big science, because it's quite obvious that today is dependent on how we have existed in the past. And how we exist today is going to make a difference tomorrow. And this is very fundamental to pure devotional service. If we have deposited spiritual credits the past 10 years, this year would be quite fruitful. In other words, there would be enough momentum to push us forward. If there have been situations where we have been lacking in being able to build spiritual credits, then we are going to struggle this year. And Krishna consciousness, as normally understood, it is not religion. There's a big distinction between Krishna consciousness and religion. Mundane religion of visiting the temple on Sundays, doing a little puja on this day or that day, kind of making peace with our existence and making peace with powers that be, so that life is smooth, that is mundane religion. Mundane religion is basically an arrangement of wanting to take care of our situation comfortably, and as a consequence, we understand that there are powers, either through family teaching, because there have been family members who have walked on that path, or through our own learning, we understand that yes, there are powers that are superior to us, and they need to fix a few things for us. Doing this puja and that puja, we can do a little bit of whatever we can in terms of fruitive activity, karma kanda, and as a consequence, life would be smooth. This is religion. Krishna consciousness is not religion. Krishna consciousness is basically a multi-lifetime project. It has nothing specifically to do with just one lifetime. It's a multi-lifetime project, because the shifts that occur when you practice Krishna consciousness, they occur over several lifetimes. There are devotees who have to come back once, twice, perhaps, in an attempt to bring some intensity, to bring some focus, and a build-up towards that focus could occur over a period of 2 lifetimes. So you might see devotees in the congregation who are on the sidelines. They appear to be in the periphery. They may not be practicing very seriously, but they seem to turn up whenever there's an event. They seem to turn up whenever there's a festival. And if you tell them to chant, they might actually find it quite difficult to do so, but they will be eager to do some service. They would be eager to be a part of the congregation because they're attracted to Krishna consciousness. One should understand that this is the beginning. And when they are engaged in service and when they are given an opportunity to use their limbs in the service of the Lord, they develop spiritual credits. These spiritual credits become the foundation of how their next lifetime is going to be arranged. If there are sufficient spiritual credits that come into the next lifetime, the same congregation member who was in the periphery, who wasn't very involved, who kind of looked disinterested but would turn up every now and then or perhaps regularly, would now become a serious devotee in the subsequent lifetime. Why? Because he has accumulated spiritual credits. The philosophical confusion would be taken care of. There would be some faith which would have built over this previous lifetime, and the spiritual credits would practically allow him to move forward. And then this lifetime, when he comes with such spiritual credits, he would consolidate. And after consolidating, which essentially means you don't go anywhere, but you understand what's been given and you consolidate your presence and you basically set things right, like we would call it, there are 3 generations. And in those 3 generations, Srila Prabhupada used to say the 3rd generation is going to have the capacity to take over the world. Why would Srila Prabhupada make a comment that the 3rd generation would take over the world? Why not the 2nd generation of devotees? And the reason why Srila Prabhupada made that comment is quite obvious, because the 1st generation were pioneering. So you notice that the previous generation, which is our spiritual masters, they were pioneers. They used to explore, they went into different territories, they went and did things which were extraordinary, something which is quite unbelievable. Unbelievable in many, many instances, not just one, unbelievable in their exertion of, what they did for Prabhupada, the previous generation. They made a few mistakes as well because they were pioneers. They couldn't really do everything nicely. There were a few areas which they couldn't take care of because they were pioneering, and as a consequence, it's a process of discovery, and then you tend to commit mistakes when you're pioneering because you haven't really figured out what is exactly the appropriate way to deal with the situation. So as a consequence, the memory process of what is available and how to deal with situations is limited. But the 2nd generation, which is our generation, we have learned from their situations. We are inspired by what they did for Prabhupada because the pioneers have the ability to inspire us. They have the ability to break boundaries. They have the ability to do things which we can't conceive of today. That was the potency that was there when Srila Prabhupada was on the planet and his disciples were spreading the mission. Yeah, we hear of devotees in London staying in homeless shelters with a child. Malati Mataji, Shyam Sundar Prabhu, they were in homeless shelters with a child in London. Yeah. And then Krishna arranged for them to meet with the Beatles. And then everything else basically became history. It's all history. It's all known to us. The point is, these were pioneers. We can't imagine the spirit that was in them because they basically had the ability to break boundaries, not care about their circumstances, live in a homeless shelter with your child, unthinkable, yeah, but they did it. And then we are the 2nd generation. Now the 2nd generation has understood what went wrong in the previous generation and what was right. So we start modifying our behavior and not repeat because they are around, the pioneers are still around, there are still Prabhupada disciples around because we are being initiated by them. They are guiding us based on what they saw working. They are guiding us. They're telling us that this worked for me and this did not work for me. So I must direct, this devotee in such a way that he doesn't repeat what I went through or what I saw happen, 50 years back, 60 years back. So now they have fixed the issues of their generation and they are giving us a sense of how to proceed further. And as we proceed further, we would recognize what works and what does not work in the present congregational context. We would fix things based on this particular context, and then we would move forward and allow the subsequent generation to not have the problems that we have, right? So the point I'm trying to make is, even if you were to look at it as a movement, things change over several generations. And as things change over several generations, you consolidate You consolidate the experience of the past into the present, and then you build a future based on that. It is similar. In a similar vein, what we need to do is also have an understanding that what worked in the past has to be examined in the present. If something worked in the previous year, take today. Take today, because we are coming to a Janmashtami. So you can call Janmashtami and Gaur Purnima as checkup points, where you can basically fix a time every Gaur Purnima and then reflect on the previous year to see what worked and what did not work. You write down what worked and what did not work. How easy was it for you to chant? How easy was it for you to read? How easy was it for you to serve, read Srimad Bhagavatam, etc.? We write down, we find out these are all things that didn't work out for me. And these are all things that worked out for me. We make a note of it and then we start looking to see how we could do better. Because this process requires us to learn from the past, reflect in the present, and then improve the future. This is very important for us to do so, because if you don't improve based on the past, our results would be similar to what we did the previous year. Krishna consciousness doesn't work that way. There has to be great intensity. So in the context of this discussion, Srila Rupa Goswami has given us a verse, and this is well known from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Anya bilashita shunyam, jnana karmadi anabratam, anukulyena Krishna anushilanam bhaktiruttama. The second line, the first and the second line basically are preconditions. The conditions themselves are anya bilashita shunyam. There cannot be any other desire other than wanting to follow and serve Krishna favorably. There can't be any other desire. Anya bilashita, ta, there's a tha which is associated. The tha basically says you can't have any other desire except for self-preservation. In other words, there can be a desire for self-preservation. You could do certain things to keep mind and body together. In other words, basically, you could ask for help if there are issues with, self-preservation. However, you can't ask for anything else, because if you ask for anything else, then that becomes karma kanda, fruitive activity. So the point is, the precondition of how intensely we can associate with Krishna is dependent on how much are we able to embrace this verse. Anya bilashita shunyam jnana karmadi anavratam anukulyena Krishna anushilanam bhaktiruttama. Uttama Bhakti is completely dependent on how much we can embrace the first two lines of this verse. The first two lines of this verse says there cannot be any other motivation. One should give up the desire for fruitive activity, which is, I want to achieve something, therefore, Krishna, I have come to you. Essentially, we are telling Krishna, what I want to achieve is bigger than you. You, Krishna, are an instrument. I'm going to achieve something. You are merely an instrument. Once I achieve that particular fruit, the consequence of a relationship ends. This is the issue with karma kanda. When you worship demigods, we call upon the demigods, we call upon, the avatars even, we call upon Krishna even with the objective of wanting to achieve something. Then once that is achieved, the deity who is called upon has minimal, I would say, influence. This is karma kanda. That's the reason why it's a problem. It's a problem because the task which is to be achieved takes on an even bigger life than the deity, even bigger life than Krishna himself. This is the issue. Same is the truth with Jnana Kanda. Jnana Kanda basically wants to leave the world and be free of suffering. So once you leave the world and be free of suffering, what happens to Krishna? That's the problem. Because if your objective is to leave the world and be free of suffering, attain moksha, then you worship Krishna with the purpose of attaining moksha, then the objective of attaining moksha is even bigger than Krishna. Once we attain moksha, which is to leave this particular world and to be free of free of actually coming back to this planet, there isn't anything after that. So this is again something which is being rejected by Srila Rupa Goswami. He's saying you have to give up fruitive activity where you use Krishna as an instrument to attain what you need. And if you don't attain it, you discard Krishna, which is seen as well. And you also give up the idea that you're going to worship Krishna for getting out of this world. We are not worshipping, we are not calling upon Krishna to get out of this world. That is not the objective of Krishna consciousness. These are objectives of mundane religion. Mundane religion has these objectives. Mundane religion can give you ingredients to attain a certain fruit. Mundane religion can guide you to attain a certain outcome which is beyond this existence. Neither of those fit in with Anyabhilashita Shunyam, Jnana Karma Dhyana Vritam. How do we call ourselves religion if neither of those fits in? Because that's normally what happens in mundane religion. They don't talk about relationship with Krishna. They talk about dharma, which is performing duties. They talk about accumulating of wealth, because once you perform dharma, then there are credits which accumulate. This is called punya in Sanskrit. It's piety in English. And every religion has this concept of doing things to attain piety. Once you attain enough piety, this is called artha. Once you have enough piety, then you have the ability to desire. And when you desire and you have a large accumulation of piety, kama, the fulfillment of desires occurs. So this is mundane religion. This is the arrangement of mundane religion. Then it says, once you desire and fulfill your desires, and you want to say that you're very frustrated despite the fact that you've fulfilled your desires, and you decide that this is not the place for us, perhaps because Scripture is telling us about other planetary systems, then you want to get out. You want to be out. So the Jnani basically does not even want to have anything to do with the material creation. He wants to go beyond. But both of these are objectives of mundane religion. This is the reason why Krishna consciousness doesn't fit into the category of mundane religion, because we are rejecting these objectives. We are completely rejecting these objectives. What is our objective in Krishna consciousness? From day one, what is the objective? Are you chanting for the purpose of attaining something? Are you chanting for the purpose of being relieved of suffering? We've got to question ourselves, because neither of these fit in with the original plan of our preceptors, of our acharyas. Both of these can get taken care of, by the way, because you're calling upon the name of the Supreme. You're not wanting anything from Him, but He has a desire of wanting to provide just as much as a loving father would want to take care of his children, even though they don't ask for it. Isn't it? A parent would want to take care of their children, even if they don't ask for it. They don't need to get up every day and say, where is this breakfast, and where are my clothes, and where is this and where is that. They don't need to ask every day, because the parent knows that this has to be provided. They provide for it. So the point we are trying to make is that this is not mundane religion. So the first objective that we have to do in Krishna consciousness is to attain the goal, understand the goal. This chapter of Krishna entering into Dwaraka is very significant. Why is it significant? Because the residents of Dwaraka could have darshan of Krishna face to face. They could see the origin, the avatari, the origin of all the avatars, the samambonam, the most worshipable. They could see Him face to face. This is so extraordinary that they could see Him face to face and they could recognize Him as the Supreme. This is very special, because if you read the Puranas, you will notice that when Brahmaji and the Devas, when they get into trouble because of some issue in the material world, and they have to go and talk to Lord Vishnu, there is one Lord Vishnu, Shirodakashayi Vishnu, in every material universe. So you can call it an outpost. It is within the material universe, but a part of the spiritual sky that extends into the material universe. So every universe has an outpost where on the Kshirasagara, which is the ocean of milk, as we call it, Lord Vishnu lies with Mother Lakshmi on Shesha. You have seen this particular instance in all the Puranas. If you're watching, for example, Vishnu Puran, this is quite common. Yeah, Lord Vishnu is lying in the ocean of milk. What happens when the devas like Indra and Lord Brahma, they get into tribulations? They can't see Vishnu. They cannot. They come to the corner, they come to the border or the banks of the ocean of milk. Then they call out by offering hymns. The Purusha Shukta hymn, for example, is offered to the Vishnu who is lying lying in the ocean of milk. The Purusha Shukta hymn is the hymn, and the verses are offered in daily oblations to Radha Madhav deities in Mayapur. There are daily yagyas that are done, and the Purusha Shukta and the Sri Shukta are hymns that are offered to Radha Madhava every day as a yagya. So there's a daily yagya offering, and this is a part of it. The point is, this Purusha Shukta, Sri Shukta, is being directed to the Shirodakashai Vishnu, who is lying on the ocean of milk. And that ocean of milk is a part of the material universe. It's like an outpost. These demigods, headed by Lord Brahma, they can't even have a vision of Vishnu, who is lying, of Lord Vishnu, who is lying in the Shira ocean. They can't have a vision of him. They offer prayers on the banks of that particular ocean. They have to offer prayers. And once they offer prayers and praises, and they offer all kinds of, I would say, homage and adoration to the Lord standing on the ocean of milk, then he appears and he answers their prayers. The point is, it is not easy to see Lord Vishnu, who is in the material ocean. Sorry, in the material universe, in the outpost. How is it possible for anyone to see Krishna, who is the origin of all Vishnus? So entering into Dwaraka literally means he's entering into a part of the spiritual sky. When he is descending, the entire spiritual sky descends with him. The spiritual aspect of his existence in the spiritual sky descends with people, descends with everyone who is a part of that particular spiritual sky. Yeah, that is the beauty of Vrindavan. For example, in Vraja Bhumi, Lord Nityananda speaks to Srila Jiva Goswami, is instructing him, saying that the material universe and the spiritual universe, especially in Vrindavan, is such that Vrindavan is non-different from the spiritual universe. But what is basically important for us to understand is that in Vrindavan, there is a material covering. There's a covering of material nature. And there are people in Vrindavan who can either be on the covering of material nature, or they can fully participate in the pastimes that are occurring of Krishna in Vrindavan. Same is the case with Dwaraka. Same is the case with Mayapur. There is the spiritual sky, and there's a layer of material covering. You can either be on the material covering, or you can be in the spiritual sky. Depending on the extent to which we follow Anya Vilashita Shunyam, Jnana Karmadi Anavritam, Anukulyena Krishna Anushilalam, we would either be on the material layer, or we could be on the spiritual layer. Does it make sense? It is basically a matter of how intense we are in our connection with Krishna. To that extent, the spiritual nature of the Dham is being revealed. So it is not an ordinary circumstance when we read here that as he entered into Dwaraka, he is not entering into Dwaraka, which apparently was in the western coast of India. He is entering into the spiritual sky because he's Krishna. He is practically entering into the city of Dwaraka, which is the eternal city of Dwaraka. There might have been people in the eternal city of Dwaraka who could have been on the layer which is material, and they may not have recognized him fully. There could be degrees of recognition. Do we get what I'm saying? There could be degrees of recognition of the relationship with the Lord, and as a consequence, there could be people. Even today in Vrindavan, this is the spiritual sky. There could be degrees of recognition. There could be degrees of recognition of people who are here. And to the extent to which they have recognized their relationship with Krishna, to that extent, the Dham becomes revealed because they're entitled, because they have that particular relationship, they can see things, they can interact with Krishna in certain ways. But on the other hand, you also have the opportunity here to be on the material layer. So there are many here who are on the material layer, and they don't even realize what they're doing here. And they're basically just going through what they have to go through like any other place. So in a similar situation here, it's fascinating to see that Dwarakapuri was such that it was fascinating to see how the spiritual layer was so extraordinarily vibrant when Krishna was on the planet. This is the case with Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan as well. The spiritual layer was extraordinarily manifest. There were direct perceptions of Krishna here. I mean, the spiritual layer is fully manifest. Slowly, steadily, over time, the material layer covers over. It's a thin layer of covering because people are becoming unqualified to see the pastimes. But it doesn't mean that the Dham is not eternal. So Dwaraka is eternal. As a consequence, you see this entire manifestation of the glory of Dwaraka. What is it which is going to allow us to experience Dwaraka? What is it which is going to allow us to experience Vrindavan and Mayapur? It is the extent to which we adhere to Anyabilashita Shunyam, Jnana Karmadi Anuvritam. To that extent, we can have an experience. So as a consequence, there is work to do. You can't really come into this particular scenario thinking that you could be who you are as you were the previous year, and then you could go forward in the next year. It doesn't work in this circumstance. It requires reflection in the present. It requires taking of inventory, being able to look at things and say that this worked and this did not work. I must make changes. It's simple to do because we don't have 100 different things to do. We really haven't been given 100 different things to do. We have been given a very straightforward, very clear agenda, and that is something which we have already been familiarized with. There's a lot which has been written about it. There are a lot of examples of success in Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, including our own movement. There are so many devotees who act and who inspire. So this really isn't a mystery. What is basically to be understood is that we need to embrace this fully. By embracing this aspect fully, to the extent to which we are not coming into the environment of Krishna consciousness with all kinds of desires to fulfill, to that extent, we would be able to interact. To the extent to which we are participating in mundane religion while coming in touch with Krishna consciousness, to that extent, we will have issues. It is a progression. It may take one lifetime. It may take 2 lifetimes. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said it would take an average devotee 3 lifetimes to get their act together. Getting their act together means completely acting according to the definition of Anyabilashita Shunyam. The first lifetime is Anartha Nivirti. What is Anartha? Things in our heart which have no meaning. The first lifetime is to pick and throw away all the nonsense which is in the heart. And mundane religion, mundane religious experience can accept us. If you're in the mode of goodness, they're okay with you. They would say it's okay for you to desire this. It's okay for you to desire that. You will be considered pious. But Krishna consciousness is not about piety. Krishna consciousness does not have the borders of piety. It does not have any kind of circumstance which can define rules and regulations of the Vedas. It's beyond all of that. So we can't really say that if we follow and go every week to a temple and the relationship with the deity there is for us to be able to get things happening in our life, we can't really say that we are really strictly adhering to the principle of Anyabilashita Shunyam. We can't really make that statement. And the reason we can't make that statement is because that doesn't fit in and this doesn't fit in. It doesn't fit in, basically. It does not fit in with the definition of Srila Rupa Goswami. Our business is to go beyond what is defined in the Vedic scripture. It is to go beyond, which is the reason why Srimad Bhagavatam is the means of conquest. Why is it the means of conquest? Srimad Bhagavatam has nothing to do with mundane religion. Srimad Bhagavatam has everything to do with Anyabilashita Shunyam. you would notice that Srimad Bhagavatam slowly, steadily gives you different aspects of what works and what doesn't work. It tells you that a certain personality wanted this and they saw the Lord in this form. And then what happened? The Lord appeared in a certain form, granted the desire, and disappears. Over. Yeah? So the Bhagavatam makes everything very clear. Srimad Bhagavatam in the 10th canto talks about interaction with Krishna. In the 9th canto, it talks about interaction with Lord Ram. Because both of these personalities, Lord Ram and Krishna, they were incarnations who appear in the human form. So they're interacting on this planet. So there are interactions, there are principles, there are precepts. There are so many different examples which are associated with what they did while on the planet, because it's very significant because they were in the human form. It's very significant because they're in the human form. There's something for us to think about because there's some commonality. So I was wanting to say that reading through this, basically, in this chapter of Krishna entering into Dwaraka is an experience, because if you don't understand that he is entering into the spiritual sky, we could get a little bewildered. He is entering into the spiritual sky. He has nothing to do with material nature. He doesn't get involved in material nature. He has everything to do with the spiritual sky. As a consequence, if he's entering into Dwaraka, he's entering into the spiritual layer, the eternal Dwaraka. There's no difference. There's no difference. Those who are extraordinarily devoted to Krishna during his Dwaraka pastimes, and they're following the principles of Anyabhilashita Shunyam, they would participate fully in his Dwaraka pastimes if they have such interactions with him. Yeah? So this is basically something for us to understand, that when Krishna is entering in to his Dham, then he is entering into the spiritual sky. He is really not, he has nothing to do with this layer, material layer. He has nothing to do with the material layer. Those who are on the material layer, when he was on the planet, Duryodhana was on the material layer. He couldn't recognize Krishna. There were many personalities who were on the material layer, even though they were physically in the presence of the Lord. They could not, they knew that there was something about him. They thought that this person has powers. Since I acquired powers through certain mystic practices, this person is a great mystic. Yeah, they acknowledge the fact that Krishna is powerful, but they never accept him as the Lord. They couldn't. They were on the material layer. This is very, very typical. So they were on the material layer, even though basically they were in front of him. So now let's just read this, and I'm going to read just the translation, and then we will go through the different verses. So I'm starting with the first verse. This is Krishna. This is the 11th chapter of the first canto, Lord Krishna's entrance into Dwaraka. Sutta Goswami said, upon reaching the border of his most prosperous metropolis, known as the country of the Anarthas, Dwaraka, the Lord sounded his auspicious conch shell, heralding his arrival and apparently pacifying the dejection of the inhabitants. There is dejection. There's dejection in the spiritual sky, and this is basically due to the fact that there is separation from the Lord. So there is dejection. People feel melancholy. They feel very sad that Krishna is not in front of us. What is the beauty of this? Because they can't see him in front of him, they basically cherish his presence very deeply in their hearts, and as a consequence, he never leaves their hearts. The white and fat-bowled conch shell, being gripped by the hand of Lord Krishna and sounded by him, appeared to be reddened by the touch of his transcendental lips. It seemed that a white swan was playing in the stems of red lotus flowers. So they're contrasting Krishna's bluish black color, reddish lips, and a very white colored conch shell. So it was a swan. He was basically catching the conch shell and he was blowing into it, and it appeared as if it had reddened because of Krishna's presence. The citizens of Dwaraka, having heard that sound, which threatens fear personified in the material world, began to run towards him fast, just to have a long desired audience with the Lord, who is the protector of all devotees. So, if some material layer, they experience fear when the conch shell is blown by Krishna. When they are on the material layer, they experience great fear when the conch shell is blown by Krishna, because they are experiencing Krishna as the time factor, Kala. Because they don't acknowledge his presence as the Lord, they're experiencing his material feature as a. So when he's blowing the conch shell, the devotee experiences jubilation and wants to come close to the Lord. The materialist is experiencing fear because the conch shell, sound of the conch shell, basically causes great fear in their hearts because this is the time factor. What a contrast. The contrast is that conch shell, the sound from the conch shell, is fear to the materialists because they are on the material layer and they're experiencing the sound coming from Krishna not as spiritual sound but as time personified, because that's his manifestation for those who don't accept him. Time personified. They have to acknowledge that he is the greatest, one way or the other. On the other hand, the devotees are experiencing the same conch shell as his divine sound, the basically giving them great jubilation because they recognize he's coming into their presence. The citizens arrived before the Lord with their respective presentations, offering them to the fully satisfied and self-sufficient one, who by his own potency incessantly supplies others. These presentations were like the lamp offered before the sun. Yet the citizens began to speak in ecstatic language to receive the Lord just as wards welcome their guardian and father. So this is so important where Krishna, the Bhagavatam says, can you really offer a lamp to the sun? If offering a lamp to the sun would be significant, what is the point in offering a lamp to the sun? The sun is the sum total of billions and billions of lamps. In a similar fashion, the devotees here were offering presentations to the Lord. They were making presentations, but he was self-sufficient. He's Atmaram. He's completely satisfied. So it is being compared to offering of a lamp to the sun. The citizen said, O Lord, you're worshipped by all demigods like Brahma, the four sanas, and even the King of heaven. You are the ultimate rest for those who are really aspiring to achieve the highest benefit of life. You are the supreme transcendental Lord, and the inevitable time cannot exert its influence upon you. O Creator, you are our mother, well-wisher, Lord, Father, spiritual and worshipable deity. By following in your footsteps, we have become successful in every respect. We pray, therefore, that you continue to bless us with your mercy. So basically, he is the sum total of all relationships for the devotee. The devotee can't really have anything else. Everything else goes to the periphery. Krishna comes to the center. Everything is understood through Krishna. We will understand our relationship with the family through Krishna consciousness. We will understand our relationship with the world through Krishna consciousness. So this is the same principle. Oh, it is our good luck that we have come again today under your protection by your presence. Although your lordship is rarely visited even by the denizens of heaven, now it is possible for us to look upon your smiling face, which is full of affectionate glances. We can now see your transcendental form full of auspiciousness. Although your lordship is rarely visited even by the denizens of heaven, heavenly personalities can't have access to Vishnu easily, even though the Lord is present within the sphere of the material universe. It is like an outpost. So the Vishnu is present to guide the universe. Yeah, it is from him that the avatars come. Yeah, he comes from Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, then from him. O lotus-eyed Lord, whenever you go away to Mathura, Vrindavan, or Hastinapura to meet your friends and relatives, every moment of your absence seems like millions of years. O infallible one, at that time our eyes become useless as if bereft of sun. O Master, if you live abroad all the time, then we cannot look at your attractive face. Vanquish all our sufferings. How can we exist without your presence? Upon hearing their speeches, the Lord, who is very kind to the citizens and devotees, entered the city of Dwaraka and acknowledged all their greetings by casting his transcendental glance over them. As Bhogavati, the capital of Nagaloka, is protected by the Nagas, so was Dwaraka protected by the descendants of Vrishni. Bhoja, Madhu, Dasarha, Arha, Kukura, Andaka, etc., who were as strong as Lord Krishna. So these were personalities who came to visit him and who came to receive him. And these were personalities who are being described as being as strong as Krishna. Now, when they're using the word as strong as Krishna, this is not to signify that they were as powerful of Krishna from an eternal sense in the terms of what I would call as Goloka, being in Goloka, the Samam Bonam, the origin of all avatars. This is in the context of his manifestation of power on the planet when he arrived here. So when Krishna arrives here, he comes and he manifests a certain kind of power, which is contextual to what is for this particular planet to experience. So these devotees who are guardians of Dwaraka, they are considered to be as powerful as Krishna, but in the context of affairs of this world. Because now they're talking about Dwaraka, which was situated as a part of what is manifesting on this planet, part of the spiritual sky. So since Krishna is going to display only limited aspects of who he is based on what is required here, those who are considered as powerful he was are also contextually as powerful as required by this planet. This Puri was just orchards, flower gardens, parks, and reservoirs of water breeding lotus flowers all over. These are very, very auspicious signs. These are very auspicious signs. Hermitages, orchards, flower gardens, parks, and reservoirs of water with lotus flowers. These are very auspicious signs. So it is basically a description of Dwarakapuri. There was auspiciousness all around. This basically is a description of the highest mode of goodness, where all of these, which are being described here, hermitages, orchards, flower gardens, parks, reservoirs of water, they all fall in the category of the mode of goodness. So it's very pleasing to the heart. Great peace comes if you're in those environments. The city gateway, the household doors and festoons, arches along the roads, well, nicely decorated festive signs like plantain trees and mango leaves, all to welcome the Lord. Flags, garlands, and signs painted with slogans, all combined to shade the sunshine. So basically, this is plantain trees and mango leaves are still very much a part of decorative aspects. Especially, you see this in South India. Not much in North India. I haven't really observed much here. But in South India, if there's a wedding or if there's a festival in a temple, you would see both the doors. There would be plantain trees on both the doors. There would be, with the plantains. And then there would also be a lot of festoons and mango leaves. Mango leaves are considered to be very auspicious as well. The highways, subways, lanes, markets, and public meeting places were all thoroughly cleansed and then moistened with scented water. And to welcome the Lord, fruits, flowers, and unceasing were strewn everywhere. Auspicious, completely auspicious signs. In each and every door of the residential houses, auspicious things like yogurt, unbroken fruits, sugar cane, and full water pots with articles for worship, incense, and candles were all displayed. On hearing that the most dear Krishna was approaching Dwaraka Dama, magnanimous Vasudeva, Akrura, Ugrasena, Balarama, Pradyumna, Charudeshna, and Samba, the son of Jambavati, all extremely happy, abandoned resting, sitting, and dining. They all were rushing to see him. We will talk more about all of these personalities in the 10th canto. They hastened towards the Lord on chariots with brahmanas bearing flowers and other auspicious items. Before them were elephants, emblems of good fortune. Conch shells and bugles were sounded and Vedic hymns were chanted. Thus they offered their respects, which were saturated with affection. At the same time, many hundreds of well-known prostitutes began to proceed on various vehicles. They were all very eager to meet the Lord, and their beautiful faces were decorated with dazzling earrings, which enhanced the beauty of their foreheads. Quite astonishing to hear that 5,000 years back, in the setting and the context of Dwaraka, there were prostitutes. So it appears, Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, that the so-called idea of women who are in prostitution, engaging in prostitution, is not a modern phenomenon. It existed in Dwapara Yuga. Yeah, perhaps not in Treta Yuga during Lord Rama's reign. It existed in Dwapara Yuga because there was a fall in virtue. Now, the point which is being made here is that as these women themselves were, due to the, I would say, twist of their fate or destiny in certain ways where they couldn't really go against their nature, they ended up offering that service to the rest of the citizenry. And there were men who were very low charactered who took advantage of their services. The idea was that since they were low charactered, these men, there was a lot of infidelity in their hearts. And as a consequence, it was better for them to engage with these prostitutes rather than basically disturb others who are properly situated. Because if men with low characters, if they can't find, I would say, means for them to satisfy their sinful nature, then they would spoil chaste women. As a consequence, this particular avenue was available, and this is surprising to see that it was a part of Dwaraka Puri. Now, those who were engaging in this activity, they would 100% be situated on the material side. They couldn't possibly recognize the Lord and appreciate His presence amongst them. But the prostitutes themselves, they seem to be extraordinarily jubilant in wanting to welcome the Lord. So they seem to be wanting to participate in devotional service. So Srila Prabhupada basically is talking about how powerful Krishna consciousness is, that it can basically give an opportunity for everyone, regardless of their particular state. It gives an opportunity for them to move forward. So regardless, there's no judgment as to what they were. They're given an opportunity to move forward. This is the magnanimity of Krishna consciousness. There is no judgment whatsoever. Mahaprabhu appeared and he completely removed all barriers for the distribution of Krishna consciousness. He made, for example, because the caste system in India was so rigid and very prevalent those days, he basically wanted to establish Krishna consciousness without any boundaries of caste. As a consequence, he empowered Haridas Thakur, who was previously a Muslim, and he became the Namacharya. This allowed our movement to break out of boundaries where we don't really discriminate, saying that this person is such and this is his background, this is his past. The past really doesn't matter. The past doesn't matter. Everybody has a past. It doesn't matter. Which is the message which is being given here, the devotional service being distributed. It's being distributed so magnanimously. Everybody can take advantage and they can move forward. Everybody can move forward comfortably and they can take advantage of Krishna consciousness. It's very powerful. It's very powerful. Because Gauranga Mahaprabhu, he broke down all the barriers. Because he knew that if he had kept the barriers, and if, for example, a Brahmana, a properly situated Brahmana, had become the Namacharya instead of Haridas Thakur, then the Brahmin community, if they were very caste conscious and corrupt, and they were not in touch with Vedic reality, they would have enforced rules and they would have put so many stops in our movement. They would not have allowed this to move forward. So as a consequence, he chose someone who was completely out of the boundary. He said, now go, this is basically a Muslim. He basically is the Namacharya. So who are you going to deny Krishna consciousness to? If a Muslim born is a Namacharya, then who are you going to deny within the context of the caste system? Are you going to say that you're not qualified if someone is a Chandala? You can't, because the fact is that the Namacharya himself is outside of the so-called caste system. So this was strategy. Lord Buddha did the same. He basically rejected Vedic conception so that he could basically instill basic good qualities into the population. He rejected Vedic science. Why did he do it? He rejected Vedas. He rejected the Vedas, Lord Buddha. He rejected it because If he had continued keeping the Vedas, then what would have happened was his teachings would have been highly restricted only to a few people. He basically wanted to bring up humanity. He wanted to qualify the entire race because they were indulging in such heavy sense gratification in the name of the Vedas. So he rejected that, so that now he has an open audience. This is strategy. We need to understand that there is strategy involved in preaching. And as a consequence, there's a lot of purity which is required to preach effectively. One also has to strategize. One has to plan. You have to have a 10, 20-year plan on how you want to achieve things. So this is the beauty of our movement. Our movement has been strategized. 500 years back, Lord Gauranga nominated Haridas Thakur, a Muslim. Can anyone complain today, saying that, oh, you can't distribute it on the streets? Yeah, you can distribute the Naam on the streets because everybody is entitled to hear Naam. Anybody and everybody can be given mercy. There are so many devotees in our movement who are Muslims. They are practicing. I was just talking to Satyanarayan Prabhu. He's a Prabhupada disciple. He was visiting Vrindavan a few weeks back. And he is in charge of BBT's book distribution effort in the Middle East. And he was just telling me that such great demand exists in the Arabian countries of Prabhupada's books. They call them the big books and the small books, etc. There's so much printing that's going on in Arabic. There's a lot of demand in the Middle East. They're buying books off the shelf, our books. And these are basically practicing Muslims, or you would say that they're in the context of Islamic countries. I know so many devotees who are in the Muslim countries, so many. Very sincere, extraordinarily sincere to the point where they take such risk in spreading the mission. It's quite amazing. So if we have barriers in not wanting to do Harinam and present Krishna consciousness to the Muslim population, it's our problem. Our Namacharya was the next Muslim. Yeah? So we don't want to keep any kind of constraint in mind because these constraints technically have been removed by Mahaprabhu. So in a similar context, these prostitutes, because of their eagerness to see Krishna, they are wanting to engage in devotional service despite the fact that their lifestyles were decidedly sinful because of their fate. Whatever it is, they couldn't really modify their fate. Now they have an opportunity. In the same context, you have, for instance, Bilva Mangal Thakur, who comes in a Vishnu Swami Sampradaya. And Bilva Mangal Thakur, he used to regularly visit a prostitute in his previous ashram. Her name was Chintamani. And one day he took such trouble in reaching the prostitute when it was raining. Yeah, apparently he crossed a river sitting on a corpse. No one would sit on a corpse and cross a river. He was so desperate to meet with her that he sat on a corpse and he crossed the river. Then he climbs up her house using a rope, but apparently it's a snake. It's a venomous snake. He was so desperate that he caught hold of the snake and he climbed up and went into her room in the house. It was raining very hard. Then she starts educating him. If you're this desperate to just come and meet with me, even if you put a part of this desperation in pleasing the Lord, you will achieve such success. So he accepts Chintamani as a spiritual master. Her name is Chintamani. And in his work, you can see her name being mentioned in the context of a spiritual master. Why? Because she is instructing him in the science of Krishna consciousness. She was able to open his eyes. So this is the beauty. She was able to open his eyes, and he was able to see the truth, and as a consequence, he is able to accept it. Bilva Mangal Thakur's teachings were such that Krishna basically used to interact with him. Krishna used to interact with him. So it's quite fascinating to see that there are many devotees with a past, but with a glorious contribution to Krishna consciousness. So we should be very careful in judging people. We should be very careful in looking at circumstances and saying Krishna consciousness can't be given because someone is of a certain nature. So we want to be careful with that as well. Now, what is being seen here is that they're all proceeding to welcome him. Now let's go further. Expert dramatists, artists, dancers, singers, historians, genealogists, and learned speakers all gave their respective contributions, being inspired by the superhuman pastimes of the Lord. Thus they proceeded on and on. Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead, approached them and offered due honor and respect to each and every one of the friends, relatives, citizens, and all others who came to receive and welcome him. See, this is so special. See, sometimes when we are discussing Krishna Katha, we sometimes feel Krishna is communicating with me. You know, when I sat in this particular class, this class was meant for me. This class had a message which was attractive. Yeah. So the beauty is that, yes, Krishna, even though he is one, he expanded his connection during that time and interacted with the entire citizenry in different ways, depending on their qualification. Yeah. This is so amazing. He's just basically, everybody felt that, yes, Krishna is paying attention to me. This is the true sense of selflessness. If someone is truly selfless, they have the ability to make others feel that they are interacting with each and every one in a very special way. The Almighty Lord greeted everyone present by bowing his head, contextually, exchanging greetings, embracing, shaking hands, looking and smiling, giving assurances and awarding benedictions even to the lowest in rank. Awarding benedictions even to the lowest in rank. He was interacting with everyone. Everyone felt satisfied about this interaction. Then the Lord personally entered the city accompanied by elderly relatives and invalid brahmanas with their wives, all offering benedictions and singing the glories of the Lord. Others also praised the glories of the Lord. By the word invalid, they're talking about those brahmanas who had retired, who are not functional in society, but they were very senior in age, and they were basically taken care of because they were praising the Lord and praising the king. They visited him with their wives. When Lord Krishna passed over the public roads, all the ladies from the respectable families of Dwaraka went up to the roofs of the palaces just to have a look at the Lord. They considered this to be a greatest festival. Yeah. Apparently, it was very opulent. As a consequence, there were individual mansions, and they all could go to the roof of the particular mansion and then look down upon the road. The ladies did not want to mix with the rest of the crowd, so they basically stood at a respectable distance. The inhabitants of Dwaraka were regularly accustomed to look upon the reservoir of all beauty, the infallible Lord, yet they were never satiated. The Lord's chest is the abode of the goddess of fortune. His moon-like face is the drinking vessel for eyes which hanker after all that is beautiful. His arms are the resting places for the administrative demigods, and his lotus feet are the refuge of pure devotees who never talk or sing of any subject except his lordship. The Lord's chest is the abode of goddess of fortune. She is permanently situated there. She does not feel like leaving him even for a single moment. His moon-like face is the drinking vessel for eyes which hanker after all that is beautiful. Basically, if there is beauty in this world, it is simply a manifestation of a very minute aspect of Krishna. Because Krishna is extraordinarily beautiful, beautiful to the maximum extent possible. Beauty exists in this world. A fraction of his beauty is seen even in this world, and we are attracted to that beauty because we are eternally attracted to Krishna. In reality, we are attracted because this is one of the features of Krishna. Similarly, his arms are very powerful. We are attracted to the power of this world. We are attracted to powerful people because Krishna is all powerful, and because we are attracted to him, we try and think that someone who is a very minute fraction of his power is also attractive. So all attraction is only Krishna. Small fractions are seen here and there. We get attracted to those small fractions simply because they're also a part of Krishna. As the Lord passed along the public road of Dwaraka, his head was protected from sunshine by a white umbrella. White hair fans moved in semicircles, and showers of flowers fell upon the road. His yellow garments and garlands of flowers made it appear as if a dark cloud were surrounded simultaneously by the sun, the moon, rainbow, and lightning. After entering the house of his father, he was embraced by the mothers present, and the Lord offered his obeisances unto them by placing his head at their feet. The mothers headed by Devaki. Yeah, there were 18 wives of Krishna's father. Mother Devaki and Mother Rohini were two of them. Krishna's mother was Mother Devaki. Balaram's mother was Mother Rohini. In reality, Sri Balaram was conceived in the womb of Devaki, but transferred to the womb of Rohini. So the point is that these were all Krishna's mothers. And as he entered in, the 18 mothers, the 18 wives, who some of them were stepmothers, even they felt extraordinary joy as a mother would feel towards their child. Krishna was very old at the time, relatively speaking. Yeah, more than 100 years, because the Kurukshetra war, he had grandchildren. As a consequence, he considered quite old, relatively speaking. He was not old by appearance. He was old by seniority. The mothers, after embracing their son, sat him on their laps. Due to pure affection, milk sprang from their breasts. They were overwhelmed with delight, and the tears from their eyes wetted the Lord. It's quite extraordinary. They were embracing their son, who himself had grandchildren. But the motherhood, the essence of motherhood is basically the affection and the feeding aspect of nurturing the child. As a consequence, the very essence of motherhood was displayed by the different mothers of Krishna, even though he was quite old. When they embraced him, the idea of wanting to feed him with their own breast milk is being seen here. As a consequence, there is a manifestation of milk from their breast, because when they're embracing him, they want to feed their child. It's just like a mother in separation is wanting to exhibit the quality of nurturing and protecting the child. This is seen by the cows of Vrindavan. When they are around Krishna, they are around Balaram, they pour milk out. Why? Because the cow is the mother. So the cow wants to basically feed. They want to serve Krishna through feeding. As a consequence, there's a display of affection and love, and it's manifesting itself as, pouring out of milk, which is a very, 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 I would say, it's a very, very wonderful description of motherhood, or devotees in motherhood, in the sense that Vatsalya Bhav, people who are attracted to Krishna as a mother would be to a son. This is that display. Thereafter, the Lord entered his palaces, which were perfect to the fullest extent. His wives lived in them, and they numbered over 16,108. So when Krishna enters into Dwaraka, he enters into the palaces. The queens of Lord Krishna and rejoiced within their minds to see their husband home after a long period abroad. The queens got up at once from their seats and meditations. As was socially customary, they covered their faces shyly and looked about coyly. So they were displaying signs of shyness, yet they couldn't contain themselves because they were in separation from their husband. Krishna expanded himself into 16,108 and entered into the different palaces, which were all identical. They were all very well situated. The insuperable ecstasy was so strong that the queens who were shy first embraced the Lord in the innermost recesses of their hearts. Then they embraced him visually, and then they sent their sons to embrace him, which is equal to personal embracing. But, O chief amongst the Bhrigus, though they tried to restrain their feelings, they inadvertently shed tears. These are tears of ecstasy. There is no reasoning, because they were in so much love that all the protocol which they had to follow was thrown out of the window, because it was a display of love. So they first tried to be shy, they tried to be a little bit more restrained, they tried to cover themselves. All of this was being done by them because they were trying to basically follow protocol, what is expected of them as queens, as residents of Vedic India. But the ecstasy of coming in touch with Krishna, just being able to see him, first there was deep meditation in the hearts because he was not seen outside. Then there was visual feasting. They were basically able to see him. So they were basically looking at him, and they were able to see him as they waited for him. And then they couldn't contain themselves, so they sent their sons, go embrace your father, because this was one of the ways to embrace Krishna. Embracing of the son, embracing of the child is considered to be embracing by the wife. It is affectionate, but it is considered to be proper protocol. And then they couldn't contain themselves. They started crying. Although Lord Sri Krishna was constantly by their sides, as well as exclusively alone, his feet appeared to them to be newer and newer. The goddess of fortune, although by nature always restless and moving, could not quit the Lord's feet. So what woman can be detached from those feet, having once taken shelter of them? The Lord was pacified after killing those kings who were burdensome to the earth. They were puffed up with their military strength, their horses, elephants, chariots, infantry, etc. He himself was not a party in the fight. He simply created hostility between the powerful administrators, and they fought amongst themselves. He was like a wind which causes friction between bamboos and so sparks a fire. This is such a powerful statement. He was, you see, when you're in a forest filled with bamboo trees, the wind blows and the bamboo stalks, they basically come in touch, and there's some friction between these bamboo stalks. And as a consequence, because each and every entity in this world has 5 elements, they are made of earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Because they're made of 5 elements, there's fire in every entity. So when these 2 bamboo stalks, they have some friction between them, then fire explodes. There's fire which is caused. And then this causes a forest fire. The forest fires start from bamboo because there's friction between leaves, there's friction between branches, because the fire is available. It is there in different, entities. Now, what is being seen here is that Krishna himself didn't participate in the war, but he caused friction. He basically provided that particular destructive phase because the kings were wicked. And because they were wicked, they were moving away from Krishna consciousness, and they had to basically deal with Krishna as the time factor. What does the time factor do? The time factor basically destroys. Krishna says this in the 11th chapter. Time I am. I'm time. I'm here to devour everything. I'm here to destroy. So basically, the time factor destroys everything. Yeah, Krishna manifests his presence as a time factor to those who can't see him as one who is resident in the spiritual sky. They have to understand him from a material conception. So what does the time factor do? The time factor causes quarreling. So he, as the time factor, caused quarreling to occur amongst the kings. Because they had moved away from being Krishna conscious, they are now dealing with the time factor. It is causing quarrels, and because of the quarrel, they start fighting with each other, and that ends everything. It is very important for us to understand, if amongst the devotee community we are quarreling, and there's too much friction and there's conflict, please understand that we have moved away from Krishna consciousness. We are dealing with time. This is the feature of the time factor. This is definitely a feature of the time factor. Here it's being said, he simply created hostility between the powerful administrators. Krishna didn't go and meddle around and create hostility. When they're using the word, he simply created hostility. He, as the time factor, created hostility because they had moved away from Krishna consciousness. This hostility is basically the first phase of destruction. This hostility practically resulted in destruction. That Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, out of his causeless mercy, appeared on this planet by his internal potency and enjoyed himself among competent women as if he were engaging in mundane affairs. The women had to be competent. His queens had to be competent. To have Krishna as a husband, that woman had to be competent. But from an external perspective, he appeared as if he was just like a mundane husband or a mundane father. But in reality, he was basically engaging through his internal potency. There were souls who wanted to interact with him as wife. And he was facilitating that interaction. His internal potency, Yogamaya, yoga means to bring together. She is basically bringing these souls who want to be associated with Krishna in matrimony as a wife. And they are facilitated. This is being facilitated by his internal potency. Although the queen's beautiful smiles and furtive glances were all spotless and exciting, and although they could conquer Cupid himself by making him give up his bow in frustration, this is basically a description of how beautiful they were, that Cupid could be made to give up his bow in frustration. And although even the tolerant Shiva could fall victim to them, still, despite all their magical feats and attractions, they could not agitate the senses of the Lord. The Lord was independent. He was Atmaram. So he could not be agitated by these women. He could not be. The common materialistic conditioned souls speculate that the Lord is one of them. Out of the ignorance, they think that the Lord is affected by matter, although he is unattached. This is the divinity of the personality of Godhead. He is not affected by the qualities of material nature, even though he is in contact with them. Similarly, the devotees who have taken shelter of the Lord do not become influenced by the material qualities. The simple and delicate women truly thought that Lord Sri Krishna, their beloved husband, followed them and was dominated by them. This was illusion. For the purpose of rasa, Yogamaya, the internal potency of Krishna, could create a certain conception amongst the women who were married to Krishna that Krishna was being dominated by them. Why? Because this allowed that particular relationship to function. They felt satisfied that I'm very beautiful, I'm very attractive. As a consequence, my husband is attracted to me. This gives satisfaction to them. And this satisfaction is a part of the relationship. And Yogamaya, Krishna's internal potency, creates that satisfaction so that they can act naturally in that conception that Krishna indeed is dominated by them. But in reality, there was no way. They were unaware of the extent of the glories of their husband, as the atheists are unaware of him as the supreme controller. Yeah? They were unaware of the extent of the glories. So both of them are unaware. The atheist is unaware. He experiences death because Krishna comes to him as the time factor. The queens of Dwaraka were also unaware of their husband's nature, but this was more in terms of facilitating that connection. This was Yogamaya's contribution. So we stop here. We have concluded chapter 11. The summary of the chapter is fundamentally that the extent to which one adheres to Anyabilashita Shunyam, Jnana Karmadi Anavratam, Anukulyena Krishna Anushilanam Bhaktiruttama, the extent to which they are adhering to this, practically having no other desire other than wanting to serve and move towards and serve Krishna favorably, to that extent one is a part of Krishna consciousness. And progressing from one year to the other, one lifetime to the other in that favorable direction is very important. Qualifying ourselves for that particular situation or state of consciousness is a matter of working on our daily sadhana bhakti, working on our quality of association, working on our chanting, working on our reading, working on of the aspects of serving the deities and also being interested and wanting to recite and serve the Dham. These are aspects of what we need to do, and we want to improve upon these aspects because these are the most important foundational pillars of Krishna consciousness. So it's easy for us to identify what we need to do because enough has been said, enough has been discussed, a lot has been written by Srila Prabhupada. It's easy for us to identify this. Now, what is required is for us to take this up and then put it down as a parameter and start improving upon it on a year-by-year basis. This is very important for us to do. So I'll stop here and I'll take any questions if there are. Maybe we have around 10 minutes. If there are more questions in 10 minutes, please do write to me on the WhatsApp group. Any questions? I'm not. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, please.
Krishna Prabhu. Prabhu, about Chintamani, the guru of Mangal Thakur. I don't know whether I'm saying correct. Is it? I don't know where I read or I heard. Is it? It is just a pastime to for us to understand that she just as it mentioned in Bhagavatam, even a prostitute. Also, there is another place. Also, I heard, even the ladies, how the ladies bangles shakes, and that together, that from that also you can get a lot of. There are so many gurus you can follow. Otherwise, the Chintamani is that it's like Brahma or I don't know whether I'm asking correct. Yeah, something.
No, it's all right. Don't worry. Let me clarify. First of all, it is not a metaphor. It is the
Okay,
truth.
okay,
Bilvamangal Thakur had an affliction. He had affection for a prostitute. Her
yes,
name
yeah,
was Chintamani.
yeah,
And basically, he has recorded his experiences of how he came into spirituality and
yeah,
how basically she took his attraction and transformed it into an attraction for the Lord by giving
oh,
him instructions. So this is basically the first point. Yeah. So it is a
okay,
real story. It is
oh,
not an example.
yeah,
Now, the other place where you would have read about it is in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. That is
yeah,
also true, which is about the Pingala, the prostitute.
yes,
Pingala, the prostitute, in the 11th canto, Krishna is talking to Uddhava
yeah,
and he is giving him instructions based on the teachings of the Avadut Brahmana, the Avanti Brahmana. Now, who is this Avadut Brahmana? This Avadut Brahmana is Lord Dattatreya. The teachings of Lord Dattatreya are a part of the 11th canto. And Krishna is instructing Sri Uddhava, and he's saying that basically, according to the teachings of the Avadut Brahmana, you can learn from anybody.
yeah,
You can learn from a python, you can learn from a prostitute, you can learn from, what I'm saying is sometimes we look at, in terms of being judgmental, from a societal point of view, these are very insignificant personalities when we look at a prostitute or a snake, etc., etc. But Krishna, the Avadut Brahmana, Dattatreya's teachings, Pingala, the prostitute, she becomes a philosopher. You can learn from her. Now, our acharyas, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and others, have also given opinions. Why was this prostitute transformed that she started speaking things in such wonderful ways? It was because Lord Dattatreya was in the proximity. He was there in that environment. As a consequence, her consciousness had transformed. And because her consciousness had transformed, and as she stood waiting for customers to come, her own consciousness transformed, and she started basically talking about transcendence. The point which I'm trying to make is these are not metaphors. These are not examples. Yeah, they are real instances.
yeah, okay, yeah. Thank you, Prabhu.
Sure.
Hare Krishna, Shivanand Prabhu.
Haribol.
I just wanted to ask, we had Bhagavatam Sangha on Thursday and we were looking at Canto 2. So is it okay if I ask you a question on that?
I can try.
Thank you. So in the purport, it was explaining how Lord Shiva has conquered lust, but he's not conquered anger. And then the Bhagavad Gita explains that anger derives when either, our lusty desires are not satisfied, or that we get those lusty desires and it's not what it's cracked out to be. So how is it that Lord Shiva has conquered lust, but he's not conquered anger?
What is lust?
I would say lust is trying to satisfy our own senses.
Good. Lord Shiva is transcendentally situated. He has no interest in activities that are distinctly required for satisfying his senses. Because theoretically, sexual activity and anger are connected. They're connected because when sexual activity does not take place, then the sexual energy which is within one can be transformed into wrath, into anger. So they are connected. As a consequence, both are equated. So there can be anger and there can be sexual activity. So both of these are destructive. So that's why they're saying that sexual activity can destroy. How does it destroy? Because there are species of animals which engage in the act of reproduction just once and they give up their life. Because the whole idea of sexual activity is so powerful and so destructive that the animal basically gives up life even after just one engagement in procreation. So there is an equation between sexual activity and anger. That's the first point. Lord Shiva has no interest whatsoever in being attracted by material phenomena because the goddess Parvati, who is considered to be extraordinarily good looking, the most good looking in the creation, she can't really distract him. He is not distracted by her presence. So, but he can be angry. Why can he be angry? It is like the anger of the divine. He has no lust. He has no objectives other than what Krishna wants him to do. If Krishna wants him to direct his anger towards a certain situation, he will direct his anger towards that. Lord Shiva has no lust. He has no independent aspiration to fulfill, or his senses. Even though he is the Lord himself in one sense, he's the expansion of the Lord. That is, he's not Jiva, he's not Vishnu, but he's not Jiva either. He's almost equal to Krishna, almost. The Brahma Samhita talks about the transformation of milk into yogurt. Lord Shiva is yogurt, Krishna is milk. One sense, yogurt and milk are the same. In another sense, they're different because yogurt can't transform itself back into milk. Milk can go and become yogurt. So there is a difference. The point we are trying to make here is one can be free from lust and they can hold a lot of anger. This is Sankarshana. Sankarshana's anger destroys the false ego. Lord Shiva's anger destroys the false ego. He's like a guru. Where is this anger being directed? It is being directed by Krishna. Lord Shiva basically is completely surrendered in his heart. And as a consequence, he directs his anger towards the direction in which Krishna wants him to direct his anger. This is divine anger. It is not driven by unsatisfied lust. Does it answer your question, Prabhu?
Definitely does. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Not at all. Any other question or comment?
Okay, Prabhu, I'll ask one more question if no one comes forward, if that's okay.
Yeah,
I was going to. You spoke a lot about learning from the past, planning the future, and we require a lot of reflection in the present. So what is it, something that you do also that allows you to reflect in the present? What questions do you ask yourself?
Bringing yourself first to the mode of goodness. You can't reflect if you're not in the mode of goodness. So strategize to bring yourself to the mode of goodness. Waking up at a certain time, eating certain kinds of foodstuff, and then basically engaging in sadhana, guru puja, etc. All of this helps you cultivate the mode of goodness. When you cultivate the mode of goodness, then you have the ability to reflect. Reflection can't happen in passion, but driven by the senses. Reflection can't happen in ignorance because there is no perception of what is required. Reflection can only happen in goodness. So first establish sattva, and then after establishing sattva, one engages in such reflection. Yeah. So what do? You reflect on what has occurred. You reflect on what the goal is. Write down the activities which have to be performed today to attain the goal. See how we fared in the activities the past year, and see how we want to improve in the future. All of these.
Thank you.
Sure. Anything else?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, one question, please.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, you talked about it takes 3 lifetimes to get the act together, and first lifetime will go in anartha nivrutti. Could you please comment on the what happens the coming lifetimes? If we spend one.
See, first of all, sure. See, first of all, we don't want to assume that it is going to take 3 lifetimes. Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur said average devotees would take 3 lifetimes. It doesn't mean that everybody is going to need to imagine that it's going to be 3 lifetimes. So I have 2 more lifetimes to go. I can take it easy. So we don't want to assume that. But an average devotee, this is how it works. They struggle with their senses. They struggle with their desires for an entire lifetime, and they try and eliminate those desires. And then the subsequent lifetime, next lifetime, it would appear as if this devotee is a new devotee, but you will find that very quickly they are advanced. And then it is because the previous lifetime they've already covered the anartha nivritti part. In this lifetime, they immediately become deeply interested in aspects of Krishna consciousness which are more advanced. And in this second lifetime, they're consolidating their Krishna consciousness. How are they doing so? Because in the previous lifetime, they struggled with all their desires. In this lifetime, those desires have been largely taken care of. In this lifetime, they start understanding the relationship with Krishna. They go from Nishta all the way to Bhava. Yeah, they can go all the way from Nishta to Bhava. Nishta means becoming fixed in the Guru's service, becoming fixed in the relationship with Krishna. And then they go from there to developing Namaruchi, being able to chant with deep taste. And then from there, they develop deep attachment. This is called Ashakti. And from Ashakti, they develop loving emotions because now they're entering into the realm of love. The beginning of prema is bhava. They start feeling these emotional aspects of Krishna consciousness where they're very attached to Krishna because they've now understood their relationship fully. And then now the last lifetime is the consolidation of love that has already begun. So this is what is the 3 lifetimes.
Okay, thanks, Prabhu. One more
Sure.
question, Prabhu.
So, oh, okay.
Can
Sorry.
I ask? Someone has
Go
a
ahead.
question.
If someone else has a question, you can ask, and I'll come back to Ravindra Prabhu.
Prabhu, no, let him ask. Then I will. Maybe you might. Maybe that is his question also something to do. Like it's similar to the question he asked. So let him ask the second one. I will. Yeah.
Okay.
This is related to the first part of your. In the beginning of the class, you talked about mistakes of pioneers and great acharyas, what they have given to us, all this, Prabhu. But when I see some devotees, I feel like they become very popular with the motivational speeches, all that on YouTube and throughout, and they promote themselves more, and they are in devotee attire. It's not like they are doing something as a profession or something. How to see them, Prabhu? Can we just ignore, or can we question like why you are promoting?
I don't understand the question. I'm sorry. You said that devotees, there are some devotees in YouTube, yeah? Did you say that?
Yes. I can tell.
And what exactly?
Like there is a devotee called Gaur Gopal Das. He's very popular, and I don't follow him, but sometimes my friends forward some videos of him as if it's very inspiring. But it's very, for me, it looks very like disgusting. Like keeps talking about jokes and motivation, all that. He doesn't speak about Krishna at all. So how to see these things? Like we can ignore or
See, first of all, we have to be very careful because Ravindra Prabhu, because he's a practicing devotee. And what we must do, first of all, is that sometimes we may not be inspired by his style. Yeah, we may not be inspired. We may need something which is more serious. We may need something which is very, I would say, structured in terms of Shastra, etc. We can't really go beyond the boundaries that Shastra has given us, etc. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's in terms of personality. Yeah, we may have certain preferences, but it doesn't mean that the other person is insincere. It doesn't mean that his offering should be put down by us because he is also trying to serve Prabhupada. So what we must do is when you find that you're not inspired, so be it. He could be inspiring others. Maybe his function in Krishna consciousness is to bring, devotees like your friends into the fold by giving them a medium for them to connect to Krishna consciousness, like, humor, etc. Do you get what I'm saying? So we can't really say that it's not a part of Krishna's plan. And they could be very popular, and we don't really care. We don't really care. The point which I'm trying to make here is, so be it. If he's performing a function of being able to inspire devotees, if he's able to bring new devotees into the fold because they're inspired by him, then he's also performing a function. It doesn't mean that we need to be attracted because we may not be. It doesn't make us wrong. At the same time, it does not make his style wrong. We may not follow it. It may not make his style wrong. Do you get what I'm saying, Prabhu? We should basically expand our acceptance of all forms of Krishna consciousness in the way it's being presented. What I'm saying is that basically it's difficult to understand Lord Gauranga's plan. We can't. He is supreme. We just can't understand how someone is contributing. For example, you may not know what is the relationship of this devotee with Lord Gauranga. We don't know that, right? Yeah. Maybe Lord Gauranga loves him so much. We don't know. So we should be very careful when we are judging the offerings made by others, regardless of whether we are appreciating it or not appreciating it. We should be very careful, understanding that it is going on. It may not fit into what I would consider as inspiring, but he is probably functioning in whatever he is trying to do. So we don't want to basically criticize in a negative manner if we don't get inspired. We can stay away. There's no harm. There are so many things that you can do where you can directly read Bhagavatam. Yeah, we could do that. Does it make sense? We just don't need to act upon it. That's what I'm saying. That's all.
Yes, Prabhu. Yeah, this doubt I have, like in my mind, I develop certain kind of like and dislike towards devotees as well. So I feel myself like maybe it's offensive to think like that. Yeah, thanks, Prabhu.
It is.
Clarified.
Yeah, it is. So what you must do, Prabhu, is as follows. If this comes up where you're being very judgmental of others, then it means that you need to engage in menial service. You should go and then offer menial service in the temple, of cleaning the temple, etc., because it's very important. The second is that you should also participate in kirtan. These are two things I would advise you to do. It will help you immensely.
Yes, Prabhu. Prabhu, one more thing, like related to this. Not only the people within ISKCON or Gaudiya thing, outside people also, when I see like Jaggi Vasudev, all these, then also I become like judgmental what these people are talking about. They don't speak about Krishna, all this. Is that also again kind of offensive thinking?
Yeah, because we can't see Krishna's plan. We are not able to see Krishna's plan. We really are not able to see how Jaggi Vasudev is basically attracting and resolving issues. Is that what I want to do? No, I don't want to do that. But is he not performing some function? Maybe he is. See, the point I'm trying to make is that there really isn't any need to judge. There really isn't any need to judge at all. There isn't, because there is no need at all to accept and reject. This is the mind. The mind is engaging in accepting and rejecting. Sankalpa, vikalpa. We don't need to encourage the mind at all. We can simply say that this is a part of Krishna's plan. We should also remember how Mahaprabhu dealt with others whom he didn't agree with. He did not agree with this entire body of Mayavadis. What did he do? He went and sat near the place where they were washing their feet. They felt Mahaprabhu was extraordinarily, he was such a powerful, effulgent personality. They could see that this was someone divine. And he was in a place where pots were thrown, where they were washing their feet. So what I'm saying is basically Mahaprabhu dealt with the situation of those whom he didn't agree with philosophically in a very different way. It's good to reflect on that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes.
Prabhu, I'm just speaking from my side. I didn't come to Krishna consciousness thinking I want to do devotional service to Krishna. That's not the reason I came to Krishna consciousness at the beginning. I was thinking, because I lost my dad and I was really grieving, and I was praying to Lord Shiva as what is the purpose of life, what am I going to do? Like that I came. Similarly, there will be many others also. It's sometimes when a newcomer come to the temple, we start speaking. We say, okay, you please come. You see how Radhalandaneshwara will really, you will see how he would attract you. They are very merciful. We speak like that. So actually, that is not the right way after listening to you, because we are just encouraging them to come to the temple, that because they may come and pray for something like that. So is that okay to say like that for somebody who's coming to the temple for the first time, to encourage them? Is it okay to say something like that?
Absolutely. Because no, this is basically Bhagavad Gita 7.16.
Yeah.
Chaturveda bhajante mam, where Krishna says there are 4 different categories of people who would be coming to me. They would be desirous of wealth.
Yes.
There are those who are wanting to be relieved of their suffering, and then those who are inquisitive, and those who want to attain me. So there are 4 different types of people. So the point I'm trying to make is all of these are magnanimous.
Okay.
But we need to understand the goal as well. We need to understand the distinction. So the point is, everybody should be encouraged to approach Krishna with whatever they have in their hearts.
Okay.
Everybody should be.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there's another thing, but the goal is something like in the process. The goal sometimes it's not every devotee will understand. Oh yeah, this is my goal. I want to achieve it. I just don't want to get distracted. But not everybody will say, okay, but then I have my duties, but this is also required. Everybody reaching the goal, and the path for the goal, there's a distance. I may have 10, like 2-3 lifetimes I may plan, but somebody will say, no, I want to do it this time. So we don't know until actually what I want to say is, goal is up to them, how they are going to think, what is my goal in life, isn't it? We can't just we can encourage them, but we don't have much say on that. It's something that they have to decide, isn't it?
Yeah, see, the point is as follows. When you come into the temple, there are a few experiences. Number one, you come into the temple, you experience prasadam, you experience kirtan, you experience katha class.
Peace,
And
peace.
sorry?
I said peace, a good energy, peace.
True. Yeah, yes, to the temple, yes. The point is, what I'm saying is when you come into the temple, all of these are a part of it. So how do you strategize? A newcomer comes, you just encourage them to come again. That is all we should do.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Okay? You just encourage them to come again. So the experience they have is of prasadam, is of kirtan. That's it. No philosophy, because they can't take philosophy. They can't understand, or they may feel resistant to what you're offering them. So this is there. And it also depends on the speaker. If you're talking katha and if you're giving them philosophy, it depends on the speaker, because the speaker himself, if they are properly situated in Krishna consciousness, they would sense what the audience requires.
That's true.
If it's a serious gathering, they would offer them serious advice. If it's a gathering which is basic, they would tone down what is to be offered. It depends on the preacher's skill to understand the audience.
Yeah.
Does it make sense? So what I'm saying to you is purely from the function of inviting someone so that they could come and then talk to us and then come again, encourage them just to come. They could be coming to ask Krishna for help. They could come there for peace. They could be coming there because they like it. Doesn't matter. Just encourage them to come. Yeah?
That's true.
But it is also important for...
Actually, there are so many devotees, they do come, but as you say, they will just come because they want to gain peace. But the chanting is not, no, that's not for me. I will do maybe one round like that. As you say now, because devotees would take average lifetime 3 lifetimes. This is something I was really thinking when so many years the devotees would be coming, but still they just wanted to be there. It's not, they don't want to move forward, so it really makes sense, like looking at different devotees, how some devotees, they just come and they have already really gone high up. You can really feel it, this class is
we don't know. The point which I'm trying to make is we don't know, but we just need to facilitate and allow and encourage others. See, there was this example.
Yeah.
There was this example of during Prabhupada's times, there was a devotee.
Yeah.
And every day he used to sit in the New York temple and he used to basically block the doorway and he used to sit and read. That's all he will do, morning to night.
Okay.
He would block the doorway, stretch his foot, because in the West, they don't know how to sit cross-legged, so they would just stretch their foot. And everybody would get very disturbed because they're going back and forth. He would be blocking. He would be sitting there, he would read, he would go eat prasadam, he would sit and read.
Yeah.
And devotees, day after day, those days there were brahmacharis and they were only brahmacharis. There were not many grahasthas. And devotees used to be very disturbed because they used to think this guy is just occupying space and he comes and he sits and he eats prasadam and he's reading. Yeah? So they all went and complained to Prabhupada. They told Prabhupada, there is this person, there is this devotee, he sits there and all he does is just read and he eats prasadam, he sits there, he does nothing. Yeah, he doesn't help us, he doesn't go out, to preach, he doesn't do anything. Prabhupada looked at them, and then when they told him all he sits and reads, he said, what else do you expect him to do? Yeah. So basically, Srila Prabhupada was looking at it from the perspective of, he is engaging in devotional service, he's engaging in anga of bhakti. So what is the problem? And then that devotee who used to sit in the doorway and do that, he became Kushakrata Prabhu, who translated, I think, around so many volumes of scriptures. He was very Brahminical. He had no interest in anything. He used to just sit and read. That's it. He was quite, I would say, a little bit, I would say, eccentric in the sense that he couldn't really understand what was required in the circumstance and social circumstance. He
Yeah.
couldn't interact very well. But at the same time, he translated so many Upanishads, so many different scriptures, and he used to sit in the doorway and block the door. And devotees used to complain, saying he doesn't do any service. He just
Yeah.
comes to the temple and he eats prasadam and he sits there. The point I'm trying to make is we don't know whom Lord Gauranga has sent and for what purpose.
That's true.
We should treat everyone in that respect, that they have come and they are engaging in Lord Gauranga's service. This is Lord Gauranga's home, the temple. So we basically encourage them, and then we just invite them again and again so that they could come and participate. That's all. Don't put any restriction, because if
No.
we are doing things in an inspiring way, they will themselves be inspired to participate.
That's
If we are
true.
not doing things in an inspiring way, they would just walk away. So there's no need for any force.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, on the sometimes some devotees they come, we just meet, give a book, and then you get it, and you call them and come. They come, and then they start following all regulatory principles straight away. It's like amazing to see, just giving one book straight away. No problem. Yes, and every time then they will land up in at 7 o'clock and Guru Puja.
Yeah,
You know,
there are many devotees who basically have done that, which is what I was talking about, saying some
yeah,
of them, they're starting off again from the previous lifetime. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, thank you, Prabhu.
thank you. Any other class or any other question or comment? Okay, so if there aren't any, then we can conclude today's session. Thank you for participating. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.